Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another session by Boston University School of Hospitality Administration. And I want to take this opportunity to, of course, thank BU and the School of Hospitality. Also on the webinar today, we have Leora Lance. She's the faculty chair of the Master in Management and Hospitality program. And she will be interrupting us as all of you attendees have an opportunity to ask questions through the chat feature on this webinar. With that, I'd love to introduce myself, Javier Rosenberg. I'm an alum of the School of Hospitality. I'm also vice chair of the advisory board, and I'm the president of Northwood Hospitality. We are a vertically integrated operator and owner of hotels. With that, we have a fabulous panel today. We're very excited. It includes faculty of the School of Hospitality. It includes probably one of the most admired alums and some industry experts. I'd like to take this opportunity to maybe have them introduce themselves in a quick minute. Malcolm, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Malcolm Berg, president of EOA in Coral Gables. We're a hospitality design and architecture firm. Glad to be here. Thank you for having us.
Excellent. Thank you. Denise?
Hi, my name is Denise Korn, and I am the creative director and principal of the Lifestyle Brand Studio at Gensler, based here in Boston, right near BU, but serving hospitality and lifestyle clients basically all around the world, focused in the experience design and brand strategy and communications space. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Punit?
Hi, good afternoon. Punit Shah. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Liberty Group. We are a real estate investment firm with having owned over 57 hotels, about 5,000 rooms across the United States, primarily Hilton, Marriott, and IHG. And I appreciate being here today. Thank you.
And your background is perfect for the last introduction, Rand.
Hi, my name is Rand Morris, and my background is in architecture. I spent the last 5 years working at the Starbucks headquarters, first on their China design team, and then working on their concepts design team. I recently left the company at the end of last year and moved to the Boston area, where I'm working as a freelancer, and I'll also be teaching the hospitality design course in the fall at BU.
Well, thank you very much, all of you, and we appreciate you being here today for this panel. What I want to try and cover today are start talking a little bit about the current situation and how that may or may not have impacted design and trends in hospitality and restaurants. But I also want to spend a lot of time talking about future trends, hopefully believing that all of this will be over soon and life will come back to normal in some way. And last but not least, I would like to touch upon the role of design and hospitality within our communities, and obviously provide some guidance to some of the students and alumni of the School of Hospitality. And with that, the big elephant in the room is anything changing? Is anything changing in design, in the way you're designing hotels, you're building hotels, given the current situation? Is this current situation here to stay in any way? And maybe Denise, if you want to maybe kick it off and give us your impressions.
Yeah, sure. I think the word design, I'll use a capital D because the spaces and the places where we're inviting people to come back into hotels, into shared spaces, into event venues and large gathering places. Design will play a really big role in people feeling comfortable and confident coming back into those spaces. So I like to kind of turn the conversation up to the top of the food chain and talk about people being at the center of the communication and the strategy and the way that we welcome people back into these places. Through the power of design, we can use communications, we can use all kinds of signals, visual signals and physical signals that make people feel that they're being cared for, that the host of those spaces is on top of what needs to be proactively accommodating for people to feel safe and for people to feel comfortable, so that then they can re-enter with confidence. Architecture will probably follow. Right now, the reopening of existing spaces is the current focus on most owners and developers' mind, is to sort of get their teams and their places back open to welcome people back. So I think interior design will take a lead right now. And I think later on in the conversation, we're going to talk about what's next. But I do think there's still a lot of questions about how long this will be in our purview. And so right now it's just about making people feel that we're accommodating all of with as much knowledge as we can gain every day, and it's changing every day, how to be ready to make people feel that we have their back and that we're ready to open our doors again.
Thank you. Malcolm, I'm going to shift it to you. And just to follow up on that, do you see soft surfaces being replaced by hard surfaces? Do you see public space changing in the way it's configured and laid out as a result of all of this? Or like Denise, do you think it's you're accommodating today, but not necessarily a long-term impact?
You know, it's funny when we talk about design and we talk about trends, we usually talk about them kind of like music. You know, design trends seem to follow sort of a path, and there's kind of a wavelength that is somewhat intuitive. You know, whenever you stop and you look around, the next tune, the next tone is going to be followed by the one that preceded it. In this case, I think it's kind of like we're on a record player and the needle just got bumped. And we're all sort of trying to figure out where the needle has landed on the record. So I think we're going to hit our stride again, and the tune is going to follow, and it's going to be equally intuitive, but we're sort of reassessing the environment right now. I think a lot of the things that we were looking at before, communal tables, communal lobbies, shared spaces, those are still going to be very, very important to us. The question is how do we actually execute them? And I think now we're going into a real era where our efforts are really going to be in coming up with intuitive spaces that satisfy the needs, but also satisfy the need for cleanliness and separation and safety. I think experience is still going to be absolutely paramount, if not more so than before. The question is, how do we redirect those experiences?
Punit, I'm going to shift it over to you as an owner, an operator, and developer. I'm not sure that you currently have any development in place, but if you would you be concerned about the brand's current designs being outdated in the next year and there being big significant changes?
So I think that social gathering and interaction is still part of our DNA in the hospitality industry. And the design of our products, our hotels, our Starbucks stores, they foster interaction. And yes, we're in a temporary part of our time that we're not able to do that, but I do believe it's temporary. And whether that's 6 months or 2 years, I think people will want to go back and have those social interactions with one another. So we'll have to do that in a way that is responsible, in a way that we can preserve cleanliness and minimize touch points. But I don't think fundamentally people want to be compartmentalized into different rooms. No one comes to a hotel to sit in their rooms and to be isolated. I think the social element of it is very important. And so as a developer, we are still looking to find ways to create that environment and the ambiance where people can have that energy and bounce off one another. But I don't think that it changes. I think it just changes for now.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Rand, in your case, of course, you've been, in your past life, been very involved with Starbucks. And I think they've openly, publicly said that they are changing configuration. They're clearly incorporating a lot more takeout. Is this a trend that you see happening on the restaurant side of things?
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I think that the idea of connection is always going to be there within hospitality. That's not going anywhere. But I think at this moment, a lot of players are looking at how can we modify our operational model to meet the demand of where we are right now with COVID-19. And then within that, is there anything that we can sort of mine out that might be something that's more long lasting, that creates a new experience that may not have existed before? And so definitely within that would be takeout windows, or at Starbucks, the MOP, mobile order experience, pickup service window. Experiences like that where you can get in and get out quickly, I think is something in the short term that is going to be very desirable. We'll see how that plays out in the long term, whether that's something that people actually enjoy and they want to go out in the world and kind of take their things with them. That's sort of yet to be seen.
I'm going to go back to a very tactical question. Punit, just to put you a little bit on the spot here, you obviously operate a number of select service hotels where the breakfast component, the buffet breakfast component, has always been a key offering in that segment. Nobody has offered that these days. It's all takeout in bags. Do you see in that segment the buffet coming back?
I don't. I think that the buffet fundamentally has changed, whether it's in our business or in the cruise line business. Even prior to COVID, it wasn't necessarily the most hygienic means of conveying food. And so I think that's going to change. I think that single serve products are going to be more prevalent across all of our brands. That may require us to reevaluate the offerings that we have in our hotels, the variety of offerings, because the product cost is going to go up. The buffet style was popular because it minimized cost to the owners and the operators, and it provided a lot of diversity to the customer. So I think there's going to have to be some trade-offs, but I don't personally believe that the buffet is going to come back. And as a result, the design of our select service food and beverage offerings and layout is going to have to change a lot.
And maybe just one last question on this, on the pandemic. We all want it over, so I'll get over it quickly. But Malcolm and Denise, with that Punit just said, the buffet is dead, basically. And in last week's session, there was an interesting discussion on restaurant operators talking about efficiencies being seeked and coming out of all of this. Do you think that the real estate layout changes, that this gives an opportunity for some of that public space in select service hotels, for example, to become more efficient?
Denise, you want to start, or do you want me to take it?
Go ahead. I'm right behind you.
So I think the answer is kind of yes and no. I think what we're trying to do, and to put its point, we really want to keep assembling. People want to go into groups, and we still want to mingle. We still want to socialize. We're social creatures. At the end of the day, we don't go to a bar to drink. We go to a bar to see other people, and we'll do so with a drink in hand. I think to your point of efficiency, I think we're going to be looking at a lot more multi-purpose spaces. It's funny, when we were in New York at BDNY, we did a booth that was all about integrating people into the environment, much more intuitive and holistic. And we actually did a fantastic session where we did meditation in the middle of the event. Now, one would never think that meditation and something that's that wholesome could happen in a crowded space, but it did. And amazingly, all participants in the space, it wasn't even a room, it was an open space in the middle of the event with noises going on in the background. We all actually went into meditation, and when we came out amazingly refreshed. So I think finding different ways of incorporating activities and spaces and presenting multi-purpose spaces, but not changing them so much that they feel devoid of love and devoid of environment and experience is going to be very, very important.
I think what I would say is that the brands are implementing and testing really interesting new solutions to food delivery in the group setting. And I'll just focus specifically on the group question because it was sort of like, a dotted line from the buffet, the bad word buffet. And I think that what we're going to see now is real true innovation come out of this new creative brief that we have. And, for example, the Hoxton has always done a really great job at personal breakfast delivery, which is kind of preempted post-COVID need to sort of package in on brand and in a healthy serving size way, but also avoid the whole issue of sort of like the healthy packaging. And also environmentally respectful brands were at first panicked about having to package everything and wrap everything again. And I think we're going to see some really interesting technology and innovation that comes out of this new creative brief to all the creatives around the table. I was at that meditation session, Malcolm, and what's interesting about that, I'm still very, very relaxed from that. But no, I think that the different use of spaces is also going to present operators and people that are looking at the programmatic side of experiences at properties through a different lens now. And I will say that given what's happening in the Northeast, where we are seasonal and we do have cold periods of time, it's very exciting to see people using the outdoor spaces in different ways and embracing the indoor out nature of the experiences. So I think we're going to see more and more of that and extending the outdoor footprint and the outdoor time period, both in the hot climates as well as in the seasonal climates.
And Denise, if I can ride your coattails for just 1 second on this one, I think innovation is huge, guys. I think we need to really focus as much as possible on innovation, coming up with new ideas. I think the old ideas were fantastic in the setting that we had, but things have changed. And this is a time for anybody out there that's a bit of a disruptor and can come up with some great ideas to put them forward, because it will be very, very welcome.
Thank you, Malcolm. We'll come back to that. Changing a little bit of landscape, let's go into the current situation. The great news is that the hospitality world tends to have moved away from the bland products. And we now are seeing the concept of independence of style being highly promoted, and everything becomes boutique and lifestyle. And so Ran, maybe from your perspective, is this here to stay? Will the world continue to seek for these independent, uniquely stylish experiences across both hospitality and restaurants, of course?
Absolutely. I think if anything, this experience is going to push that even further. People are really clamoring for experiences that speak to them as individuals. And I was having a conversation recently with some of my friends from Super Studio in Boston about the way in which hospitality brands can really speak to guests and customers on more of a niche level. So I think that the boutique experience isn't going to go anywhere. And unfortunately, it is those smaller operators and those boutique hotels that are really being tremendously impacted right now financially with the current crisis. And those who can kind of see through to the other side, I think will have an experience and a product that will become highly desirable. So I don't think that's going anywhere.
I'm gonna come back to the whole concept of lifestyle and experiences. I know that Malcolm you brought up, but first, Punit, again, from your perspective, you have great relationships with the brands. You own and operate branded hotels. They have, over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, launched a significant number of new brands, and all of them obviously play along the lifestyle. What's that evolution? What does that do to some of the more traditional brands? Will they continue to exist? Will they evolve? How do you see that landscape?
So I think, Javier, that there's far too many brands, first of all, and the hotels have almost evolved into somewhat of a bar and a restaurant concept where they're very niche. The trouble with that is that the capital expenses to build a hotel are so much far greater than a restaurant or a bar. And so for our customer base to evolve and adapt every 6 to 7 years is very different than other venues. So I think that as it relates to very demographic specific brands, I believe that they're challenged, and we've developed several of those, we own several of those, but yet the more consistent brands that we've had are the ones that appeal to a wider variety of guests. And I think those will continue to survive, those will continue to do well, and those will continue to be the first of mind to owners and investors when it comes to the hospitality industry.
Denise, thank you. Denise, going to you because I know that as a creative director, you obviously look beyond just the design and architecture. There's a lot more that goes into that, and I know that you've been involved in building some of these lifestyle concepts. And I guess the question is, there's a lot of them that have a DNA to them. They have the story goes throughout design, execution, uniforms, tone, etc. But there's a lot of these. The soft brands have a lot of these. Have allowed for a lot of these hotels that suddenly, plug in a name and they now call themselves lifestyle independent. What's your perspective in terms of what really needs to happen for a hotel to have soul and truly be independent lifestyle?
Well, just to focus back on Punit's last comment, I do think that the trend that we're seeing across the globe is that everything, especially as a result of the pandemic, everything has been forced to get very, very local. And everyone is really adapting to kind of a smaller circle of movement right now. And it's really interesting, but we all feel that the change in this country and in our industry is going to come from our communities and what the communities are willing to support and serve. And so I think that the independent properties that are authentically connected to their communities and function as almost like a living room or an extension of that particular place and that kind of cultural texture will really sing very well, Punit, I agree, to a broader, more diverse audience, even the independent hotels versus just the large brands. I think the large brands are also stretching themselves to accommodate and speak in a more sense of place, grounded, authentic voice to their communities. But in terms of whether a property gets it and really does it in a real, with real conviction and with a true understanding about where they are and how they serve in their sense of place, I think the customer calls it out pretty quickly. So I don't think that this is an easy thing to achieve, because it's not just what the property looks like or the name on the door or the special do not disturb sign. It's not that at all. It's how all the different pieces come together and how the design and the operator and even the quite frankly, we need owners that have a vision to really want to commit to all of this coming together and fostering these lifestyle experiences. And those to me are going to be the properties that when the survival challenges right now will retain their employees and their teams. And I think training those teams to sort of speak forward in the way that they always have is going to be more critical now than ever.
Thank you. Malcolm, in your case, of course, you work with owners and developers. How do you make sure that what you are creating goes beyond just design and is incorporated in the whole style of the hotel, and it translates to what you were referring to earlier, the experience?
It's so funny, when you were talking earlier about design and architecture in hotels, we never approach properties from a design and architecture standpoint. We approach properties much more from a DNA standpoint. What is the true DNA of the property? What is, the word authenticity has lost its authenticity. I mean, I think everybody has sort of plastered that word out there and kind of pretended to be authentic when the fact is they were not. I think the ones that are truly authentic, like Denise said, are the ones that have local outreach, that have significance beyond just brand or a name or something that might appeal to a certain amount of people. I think the world is flat right now, and everybody has access to just about everything that's on the internet, every property that's out there. So we're becoming much more adept at distinguishing that which is real from that which is not. So we really dig a lot deeper than just the typical look. We try to stay away from trends. We try to stay away from trendy colors. we look deep into the soul of the property, or try to anyhow, try to understand what the property is all about, and then start kind of creating it from within. And that, like Denise said, it goes all the way through, and the truly authentic properties are the ones that drink the Kool-Aid, from management to, you know, the people at the front desk, at the front door, guest rooms. I mean, everything needs to be very much sort of an intuitive, holistic approach to the brand of that particular property.
Thank you. Leora, I know we have a couple of questions. Do you want to jump in with questions from the audience?
Yes, Javier, we actually have one from our friend Michael Schindler at Four Corners Advisors. Thanks, Michael, for chiming in. And Punit, this might be directed a little bit more toward you as a developer, but has anyone heard anything from the brands themselves, since we've been talking about brands, about the next generation of product types across the chain scales? Has anyone heard if any of this is in consideration at this point?
No, I have not, aside from Starbucks that has released a new concept called Starbucks Now, which is effectively a takeout only design where you have live baristas making drinks and handcrafted drinks that are effectively only for to go. But from a hotel standpoint, we've not heard anything from Hilton or Marriott regarding a new post-COVID design. Have you heard anything, Javier?
No. I think they haven't. They're not quite there yet. And actually, Michael and I were talking earlier this week, and with all of this issue, they have also impacted their team. So I'm not sure who's actually working on this. It's a great question.
There's another question here. Thank you. Thanks, Punit. From our friend Peter Beta, CEO at Frontera Hotel Group. And he said, pre-COVID, the model has tended to be where designers and developers ended up giving the directions to the designers. Do we think post-COVID, and this ties a little bit to what I was hearing Malcolm starting to talk about now, will that model flip? Will the designers have to be the ones telling the developers or the operators which way to go going forward? Any thoughts on that?
I can speak to that a little bit. I think that there's been a flow from when the pandemic reached the United States, and then we all kind of went into our shelter in place introspective moment. There was sort of a real coming together of sharing ideas and thoughts, and where that's morphed to now is that I'll speak for my clients and owners. We're all working together because we know the DNA and the sort of construct of the ecosystems that they've worked so hard to create. We're the best partners to sort of work with them and think through a lot of these challenges. So I think that the design partners and the ownership relationship is more critical now than ever. And we're here first and foremost to help people solve the problems and not make believe any of us are experts at any one thing. I mean, we're all sort of learning and real time. So I don't know if it's shifted from owners directing designers and designers. It's more of like a real partnership, and those relationships are more important now than ever. I know at Gensler, we put together a whole bunch of information and tools that come from a global research perspective on solutions and ideas to share. And I think that a lot of designers are trying to be very transparent and open to sort of share thoughts and guidance. It's a very vibrant community, and I think that designers are always wanting to support and help their owners figure things out. So.
Thank you. I'm going to shift a little bit on the same subject, but obviously from a developer and ownership perspective. Rand, do you think there's been a delay in PIPs and property improvement plans by the brands, have delayed 2-3 years in some cases? Do you think the budgets in any way will be impacted? Do you think in 2 years from now, the cost of a renovation or the cost of developing a new hotel will in any way significantly change?
Well, I think that it's almost too early to say. I think that I've been doing a lot of reaching out to different brands and listening to what they're sort of grappling with. And it feels as though they're wanting to make operational changes pretty quickly. But there's this sense of not wanting to course correct the design too soon and overreact too soon, because the consequences of that for the brand and for the customer experience could be pretty drastic. So I think that brands are going to start to look at, obviously what kind of materials are going into the space, antimicrobial materials, for example, and also perhaps looking at providing a greater sense of width in circulation zones so that there's a sense of comfort and ease. So that definitely is going to have an impact on the layout of the space. But I'm not hearing really that there's a sense of wanting to make those calls or make those changes just yet. It's kind of a little bit of a wait and see approach.
And Punit, from your perspective, thank you. From your perspective, Punit, you obviously, I'm sure you're starting to look at opportunities, underwrite deals. How are you underwriting? Are you looking at your cost per key in any way differently as you were before?
No, I think just like in your hotels, Javier, you know that we have a cost for renovations and a cost for the PIP. I don't think that the cost goes up. I think the allocation of where we're spending those dollars may change. So the design might change. Rand mentioned about the brands pushing back and trying to change some of the design. I think some of the concern and apprehension would be that a lot of owners have recently renovated their properties, and to require them to then put in additional capital to change the design and layout would be met with a lot of resistance by the ownership groups. So not only do you have the hesitancy from the brands because of the customer experience, but you have the hesitancy because of the ownership that might push back and say, hey, we're not prepared to reinvest capital into a property when we've already suffered from a reduced revenue. And, furthermore, we haven't gotten the useful life out of what we just replaced. And so there's elements of that too that will impact the renovation cycle and the adaptation to whatever this new design is going to be.
Thank you. I know Leora has a few questions. I'm going to ask you to pause for a minute just so we can finish this topic, but we're going to go into future trends and the outlook. But Denise and Malcolm, from your perspective, I would imagine that like everybody, you've seen your deal flow change significantly and maybe in some ways come to a pause while things get figured out. Does this mean there will be a huge backlog in the next 12, 18 months? Will there be a bottleneck? How do you see this playing out?
That's a tough question. I'll take it, Malcolm.
Thank you.
I actually think that the nature of our business all the time is wait and hurry up. So feels kind of familiar to me, but it is starting to stack up a bit in terms of the whole, across the country, different states opening up and these different phases. I'm always very grateful when we get a call and people are looking a few months out as opposed to how fast can you help me open the door. But I think that what we've been doing is come up with short-term, medium-term, and long-term responses to sort of some customary questions that are arising. And I think that the long term is the biggest question mark about how much, how big, how different it will feel. A lot of our development projects that got halted in, let's say, early March are starting to come back online with construction and they're moving ahead. And I don't see to Rand's point that the designs are being modified. We are doing some model room reviews and looking at, I think touchless is the one thing that people all feel they're gonna want anyways. And so the touchless layer is something that is getting built into some kind of the design revisions. But I'm pretty optimistic that, that the flow will be pretty rocky and unpredictable, but that I feel it's starting to come back.
So to follow up on that, I think if there's anything I've learned in the past 3 months is that predicting anything is kind of futile. Mm-hmm. Every time I turn around, there seems to be something sideswiping us and something that changes the course of whatever we're doing. So I have no idea whether we'll have a bottleneck. I also am extremely grateful to clients that right now are thinking a little bit ahead and giving themselves a little bit more time to digest what's happening and how we could come out on the other side. A lot of clients have said, you know what, we're just going to wait and see what happens. But at the end of the day, we're all learning this together. We're going to have to filter in ideas wherever we can. We're not here to wholesale change any design that we've already set out there. But if we can massage it, if we can slightly adjust it to make it much more usable as an experience when we open up again, we certainly will do that.
Excellent, thank you. We're going to shift a little bit into the future trends and what's happening out there. Maybe Rand, from your perspective, and I know Leora has a few questions, but Rand, from your perspective, particularly in hotels and restaurants, what do you see as really the next wave? We talked a little bit about takeout, but any other big initiatives and trends that you see happening?
I really kind of feel like space is the new luxury. It's always been luxurious within hospitality, but certainly having space around you now after COVID and having this opportunity to sort of reconnect with yourself in this experience is going to be something that hospitality needs to respond to. So brands that offer guests a spacious experience, and also I think to some extent a degree of quiet. I think we're all sort of living in this really intense, anxiety-ridden time, and our brains, I think, are really loud. And so going into spaces and environments that give us that sense of quiet and calm will be really critical. And I think underlying all of that is really just having a strong, grounded sense of empathy as sort of your guiding post through the new future that we're moving into. So that would be empathy for the guest experience, empathy for the operators and the owners, but also empathy for the property itself and what is the property really speaking to, what does it want to become, how can you speak to the history of that specific place in an authentic way that feels true, especially in the social sort of culture that we're living in right now. So I think to sum it up, I think empathy is pretty critical, and that'll be a guiding light moving forward.
Thank you. Malcolm, you mentioned the word intuitive as part of something happening and moving more to the front line. Can you maybe share and expand on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just talked about empathy, and everything we do, we try to approach from a very, very empathetic standpoint. And if you think about intuition is kind of like the presentation of empathy in many, many ways. And I always go back when I talk to friends and my team and clients, I talk about the original iPhone. When you put the original iPhone in your hand and it kind of nestled in your hand beautifully, it just felt right. In many ways, the shape of the iPhone was kind of empathetic to you as a user, how you put it in your hand, how it rests in your hand, how your fingers would glide easily on the glass, and how intuitive the whole notion of the operation of the iPhone was. I'm going to leave everything, for example, like touchless doors and all that kind of stuff to somebody else. But as we walk into rooms, whether they be guest rooms or lobbies or restaurants or pool decks, they should flow. They should feel very, very intuitive and comfortable. If you have to think about what you need to do, if you need to start reading signage, if you need to start asking questions, then we've sort of failed at providing that intuitive flow. I think because of us looking for more of a wholesome approach to life, we just talked about space. I think time is also a luxury. Pacing ourselves is also a luxury. Being able to walk into a space intuitively, not rushed, not crowded, and flow to the next space is going to be a very, very critical. So that's intuition to me is more about intuitive design that allows people to intuitively flow into their own spaces.
Denise, would you like to maybe add to that and share your thoughts?
Can you repeat where we started on this question? Was it around the question about intuitive design?
And the future design.
And the future of design, yeah. I think that the best design is always very responsive to what's going on in the world, what is going on in the hearts and minds of people and communities. And I think that, you know, to piggyback on some of what Malcolm said earlier, we really focus on a timeless sensibility as we craft and dig into what the DNA of each place is about. So if that enables it to be responsive over long periods of time, but hold on to its distinct position in the world. And I think that you know, there was a big flood and focus on surfaces that could be, you know, sprayed with Windex and, you know, spatial relations and sort of, you know, all the social distancing metrics. And those are really critical. And if you can sort of lock and load your understanding of your footprint and your spatial constraints, then that enables you to then layer in the human component that enables these places to still feel not like someone came in from Home Depot and put all kinds of warnings in front of you, but that you're creating places that have that like sort of natural responsiveness. That's never going to go away, and that's always been a part of design as a construct in sort of creating what these places are about. But the future trend for me is that the places will be much more open to a very different kind of diverse positioning that appeals to lots of different types of people. And it's not really, we like to say it's not really a demographic and a slice and dicing of a demographic, but it's really a psychographic profile of what people are, their hearts and minds are drawn to in certain places. And I think that the most successful design of the future will be responsive and speaking to that. It's a shift in the way that the audience is defined for these very special places that we create.
Thank you. Punit, maybe changing that a little bit and being more practical. You own a number of brands, hotels, a number of brands, and Starbucks. Is there one thing you're desperately waiting for design to change and get rid of? Or is there a pet thing that's driving you crazy all these years?
So I've always been a big proponent of functionality and really warmth. So there's a lot of brands out there that were really more design and you know, I'm not going to narrow in brands, but there are certain brands that really focus on being a nightclub and having darker colors and that's good for a certain niche of people. But I think that the trend and what I'm really excited about is really the sense of warmth and brightness and function. And so as that trend continues, I think it's going to be warmly received by the development and ownership community. And you know, Javier, I had a question for you too, because you have a lot of hotels that are going through renovations right now, or maybe scheduled to go through renovations. Are you holding up on any of those improvements based on what you think is going to happen with the future of design as a result of COVID? Or are you proceeding with those renovations as scheduled?
It's a good question. You know, I think like everybody, there are some projects that are moving forward that were anticipated and going forward. There are others where we were, you know, subject to a PIP, a property improvement plan. Those have now been delayed, and we are obviously taking advantage of that delay as we protect cash flow. So I think it's a combination of both, right? There are the cases where you've committed the capital, you were anticipating it, you're moving forward, and to a certain degree, you're taking advantage of potentially having less disruption on your property because of the lower business levels. But in other cases where it maybe is a cycle PIP by a brand, and you know that you can extend the product another year or two, and that helps you protect cash flow, we're doing that too. So it's a combination of both. Mm-hmm. Since you asked me a hard question, I'm forced to ask a hard question back. Anybody here, as part of the future trends, anticipate the end of the front desk? I mean, touchless, right? There's a lot of touchless check-in already existing, available. And if you think about the front desk, it is merely a transactional piece of furniture. Will that disappear, and how long will that take?
Javier, I have a quick response to that. I think that the design and the SOPs around the front desk operations has been shifting and morphing pretty aggressively over the past, you know, few years. I don't think that hotel guests want to not be greeted by someone who's welcoming them into the hotel, whether that's a front desk operator or whether it's a different kind of way that the operational teams train and sort of welcome guests in with the human component. There are people that want to just, you know, be independent and use technology to sort of get into their room and not connect with other people. But there's a lot of people that like that human presence in the lobby and at the front door. So I don't know. I think it'll be a blending of both.
But you agree with me that that interaction, and I agree with you, but that interaction doesn't necessarily have to happen with a piece of furniture in between the team member and the guest.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's been shrinking to pods and it's been shrinking to iPads, and it's slowly going away anyways. But you're right. Like, I think my only point is that I wouldn't put bets on losing that whole kind of human piece.
Malcolm, are you willing to put a date on the end of the front desk?
Absolutely not. No, I don't think a date is viable to put on it. I don't think there's a death of the front desk. I think there's a morphing of the front desk. I think, like Denise said, we started with you know, airport counters that are, you know, seem endless barriers between us and them, and we went to pods, and then we went to more residential-like tables where you can actually stand or sit down in front of someone. But now we've obviously in the past 2 rounds, we've migrated more towards people standing up, coming around and shaking your hand and greeting you, and a much more personal response. What's next? Are we sitting down in a comfortable table with a cocktail table in front of us? I'm not sure. But I do know that I personally like to show up somewhere and actually say hello to somebody. Even if I'm going to just use my card to go in, they might give me some advice as to where to go. I think that rather than people at the front desk, you're going to see them become much more concierges. I think that talking about efficiency as well, if we can train people in multidisciplinary ways where they can be the concierge / front desk person / bartender, that might happen a lot more, especially in the smaller boutique hotels.
Thank you. 2 quick questions from the audience. The first one, maybe Rand, you can take on. How does the environmental sustainability play out in the next few years? Is it going to continue to become a growing request and demand from customers looking for that kind of design or not?
Yeah, I think environmental sustainability isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to become more important. And I think how environmental sustainability sort of interfolds in with not just design, but also our post-COVID world is going to be a challenge. Sometimes going with the more sustainable sort of option, whether it's a materiality play or a structural concern, sometimes there's a higher cost involved with that. So I think everything is going to have to balance out, but environmentalism, environmental sustainability, it's definitely not going to just fade away. I think it's going to become even more important moving forward.
And the second question that came through is with regards to voice control. Are you anticipating seeing an increase of the use of voice control in hotels, elevators, rooms, etc.? Anybody want to take that?
I'll just speak to the smart room in general, maybe not voice control, but all the brands are making a conscientious effort to focus more on the smart room. And an element of that is the voice control. And so I don't think it's unheard of to think that many of the devices in your room, whether it's HVAC, television, even your alarm clock, could be controlled by your voice. Particularly with the technology and as that's evolved today, I think it's a very real opportunity so that we can focus on the touchless areas of a hotel.
Thank you. Just to go back on design and architecture and experience, what's the role of lighting, smell, noise in design? How much are you focused on that, and what are some of the things that you're seeing in those areas? Denise, do you wanna go first, maybe?
Well, I think Punit was onto something when he was talking about lighter palettes, and it's not necessarily like dark or light, but I think an optimistic sensibility that comes through the design will be a really big trend as we move forward. People are building more open to the like inside out relationships, etc. And in terms of sound and smell and sort of like all the senses, I think people, I think sustainability is going to be more important than ever, to not just to owners and developers, but to consumers. And it sort of dots its line directly to people feeling really well and healthy. And there's been a lot of discussion over the past, 10 to 15, what week are we in, 16, around what it means to feel centered and well and healthy, regardless of where you are and what you're doing. And if a lot of people are going to be traveling and working remotely, hotels are going to become a new place where people are working remotely. And how do they maintain a sense of health and wellness in a space will be a part of the design brief as well. I don't think that in terms of noise and sound and scent and smell and experience, I think we still need to kind of circle around the human condition and speak to that through the design. But I would definitely lever up on the health and wellness side of the equation in terms of a positive, really fresh and healthy environment.
Malcolm, from your perspective, the impact of lighting and all these other components, music, noise, sound in design?
We sometimes talk about design as being sort of a kind of a two-dimensional element. What looks pretty in an image on Pinterest. It's not. It's extremely experiential. We always talk about design kind of cinematically. How do you feel as you walk through a space? And when you talk about cinema and you talk about stage sets, let's call it stage sets, you're really presenting every aspect of the equation. It is all about lighting. It is all about tactility. It is all about sound. It is all about smell every so often in the sense. I think the scent is one of the most amazing memory triggers. So I think that we probably don't focus enough on those senses. I think we're learning to do so, but I don't think that we focus nearly enough on them. And I completely agree. I mean, how do you make a room feel warm? How do you make a room feel warm when it might be dark outside? How do you lower the lighting as the evening sort of progresses? All that is highly, highly choreographed. How do you attenuate sounds that might be emanating from a neighbor by actually bringing up the pitch in a room? How do you lower the pitch in a room in order to create that sense of calm? All those might sound like sort of engineering elements, but they're really very artistically choreographed. So I think they're very, very important.
And Rand, I'm going to pick on you too, because you've obviously had experience where scent and sound and lighting were critical. Do you want to share maybe your perspective?
Sure. Yeah, I think that the senses that you're referring to, you can almost think of them as levers or buttons that you're sort of pushing and pulling on. There are certain spaces or environments, particularly how a brand might respond, where lighting is critical. Other times, maybe lighting, you're actually pulling back on lighting a little bit to amplify other senses, because that's also important for the experience. The exact same space, if it's brightly lit with high power lights, is going to feel completely different than a candlelit space. Same thing with sound. The same space with 100 people in it is going to feel very different from having just 10 people in it. So I think all these sensory aspects are critical, but are highly differentiated depending on the specific environment you're trying to create, the mood that you're trying to create, the storytelling that you're trying to amplify. And thinking of it as a stage set, like Malcolm mentioned, I think is a great way to think about it. Think about it in that way, and less about just a restaurant or whatever it is.
Thank you. Well, I see we have 4 minutes left. Rand, as an adjunct professor at the school, I'll have you start with the closing And obviously, we have alumni, we have guests, but we have alumni and students. Any words of wisdom, both in relation to the industry and the current situation where they may be concerned about?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I am so looking forward to putting together this class in the fall and reaching out to students and kind of giving them more of sort of a design perspective on the industry. I am actually really hopeful about the future of hospitality. I think that anytime we as a society go through these challenging moments, especially together, we often come out on the other side with a richer understanding of one another, and a way of moving through the world, or in this case, the hospitality industry specifically, that's much more nuanced, that feels more like we're reaching out to one another. So I think the future of hospitality is bright, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. It's just important to hang in there and lean on one another through the process.
Thank you very much. Denise, from your perspective, to prospective students and alumni and looking, what's your words of advice?
I guess my words of advice would be, regardless of what the problem is that's in front of you, just think about using the tenets of human-centered design to solve for it and to solve for the people that you're focused on. I think that we want to take care of our operators and of our management teams and of our people that are serving our guests, and we also want to take care of our guests. And I think that as students, you are blessed to have Rand come into this mix. He's going to be phenomenal. I'm also really I honor the school for focusing on design and development, and this whole part of the industry is really critical for you to understand as you know, early in your courses, because the minute you get into the field, you are going to be interacting with all these different players around the table and solving for problems that you don't know are around the corner. So I think that embracing the ideas behind really great design will help you in all aspects of your hospitality careers ahead of you. And also for developers and owners to really understand the power that design can bring to your vision, will really help you kind of penetrate and sort of like cut through the clutter in this time where everyone's sort of rushing with big, quick Band-Aids on big, bad, you know, hairy solution, you know, problems that need solutions. Have thoughtful design and human-centered design drive your path forward.
Thank you very much. Malcolm, from your perspective, words of wisdom?
You know,
such a big question.
It really is, and honestly, we've covered quite a bit of this on much of this conversation. But I'm going to go back to a couple of things. Empathetic design. Be super empathetic. Be very thoughtful as you put together your projects. Don't try to imitate what's out there. Be very original. Come up with stuff that you've never seen before. Draw inspiration from things that you would never assume would be worthy as subjects for inspiration. Look at nature, look at fashion, look at minerals. I don't care what it is. Come up with ideas that nobody's ever seen before. So originality is going to be huge. Ingenuity is going to be huge. Having a sense of humor, have fun. But more than anything else, have boundless enthusiasm. When you go to your professors, when you go to your prospective employers, show them how enthusiastic you are about what you do, about how you love what you do. And keep learning. Keep your ears open. Listen as much as you possibly can. Learn as much as you can, because you know they say an expert is someone that's made all the mistakes that are to be made, and we are still making mistakes every day. So we're certainly not experts. But you don't know what you don't know getting out of school, and you have a lot to learn. We all do. So keep learning.
Thank you, Malcolm. Great. And Punit, I left you at last because you're obviously somebody that I know students and fellow alumni look up to. So we'd appreciate your comments here.
Thank you, Javier. You know, I would just say that, you know, when I graduated right after 9/11, and I was in the face of the same challenges that many of you are facing today with the, you know, the COVID issues at hand. I would tell you to not be discouraged and not let this be a framework for your future. In fact, use this to expand your creativity. Use this as an opportunity to look beyond what it is that you thought you were going to do, explore the world, and enjoy the fact that you have a hospitality background, and that hospitality will always be there. People crave authentic experiences. People want social interaction, and they love the combination of cultures that will always exist. And so despite what we're going through today with the isolation that many of us are feeling, it's a temporary measure in our lives. And I hope you use this time to really focus on what it is that you enjoy doing and love, and your passion is, because after this is all over, you're going to really excel in that. And this is going to give you that brief moment of time to really focus on yourself.
Thank you very much. I want to take this opportunity to, of course, thank our panelists for your time, for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. I want to thank Leora for organizing and coordinating this webinar, and Dean Arun for, of course, these summer conversations, which I have personally found fantastic, and are looking forward to the next ones in the next few weeks. I took notes of today's conversation, and I've concluded the following. We have killed buffets. We tried to kill the front desk, did not succeed at that. But more importantly, and I guess my message out there is, as Malcolm said, we are social creatures. Humans are social creatures. And so, you know, I think that obviously enjoying company, enjoying going out, dining, socializing, visiting, traveling, are gonna be here to stay. They will not change. We're clearly dealing with a very unique situation, but this too shall pass. I absolutely love Marriott's campaign that simply says, we will travel again, and truly believe in that. And so my advice is, learn as much as you can from these weeks and the next few months. We're all gonna look back, I think, more knowledgeable, wiser, and hopefully having changed a little bit in maybe paying attention to things that we value more. But with that, thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating, and it's been a pleasure.